Hi, my name is Albert Bello. I'm an enterprise software selection specialist, and in today's video, I want to give you some tips, some hints on how to negotiate your contracts for software, your software contracts. Stay tuned. Hi, my name is Albert Bello, and in today's video, I want to share with you some ideas on how to negotiate your software contracts to get down to 15 to 20, 25% savings for your company. So how can we do this? And I imagine that these days, people are being asked to reduce software costs because during the pandemic time, software cost has risen and everybody was, searching for a solution, searching for something that could help them to tackle that difficult time. And all the prices and costs around IT development and software development went higher than expected, went higher than usual. And that had a toll on software costs and has risen all the costs around the software industry. So it's not something that we should say that's just based on companies wanting to profit more, but was actually related to costs. Because think about it, there's not much people out there that know how to program, that know how to implement systems. And these people got super busy during the pandemic time, and the cost to hire people in the industry got super higher than usual. And everyone was, interested in jumping into this market. We saw a huge flood of people coming from different areas, entering IT, people from the services industry, joining IT staff and, joining these big tech companies. And what happened was that the companies got inflated with all this cost, with personnel cost, which is high. And somehow they need to pass it along the chain. And then the clients got to pay more for systems, pay more for subscription, and pay more for IT. And the IT industry got as one of the major costs in a company balance sheet. So in this video, I want to share with you some hints, tips, and ideas that I used myself when I was in IT, and I used to do that to negotiate with vendors. And later on in my consulting life, in the past 17 years, I've been using this to help companies and clients to lower their costs in IT. So I would like to start with the inventory of all your IT costs and all your IT contracts and all your IT related costs. Why is it important to have an inventory of all of that? Because I've been working with companies such as Fortune 500 companies and small businesses, medium size, you name it. And everybody needs to assess what systems they have in place. What I've been seeing in the previous 10, 15 years is that many companies, they go out, they buy a lot of systems because the users, they need it. And then they go buy, and they become heavily overweighted with software, and they don't assess much what they have in hand. Just to give you one example, that happens to me quite often, but I can give you a fresh example from a company in the US I worked with in the recent past, where when we started the project, they said, Albert, we have around 18 systems. And by doing the interviews and requirements gathering and talking about their processes, we figured out they had 66 systems in place. Just for CRM, they have 5 different CRMs. 5. Wasn't just one, it was 5. And why 5? Because every sales department, one department to sell to governmental entities, one department to sell to LATAM, one department to sell to North America, one for EMA, and another one for whatever. Each department had its own CRM system. Were they doing different processes? I don't think so. Although it's slightly different to sell to the government and to sell to private companies and to sell in Latam, the process itself, it's not that different. That entails to have a different system. You can accommodate, different processes in one single solution. So they ended up having 5 different CRMs. Is it needed? No. Is it cost efficient? Of course not. You have 5 different vendors with 5 different solutions. The other day, I was talking to my neighbor, and he works for a big insurance company in Quebec. And he was telling me that he had the same situation based on this very own example I just gave you. He said, listen, I work with this company X here in Quebec, and we have the CRM Y, I would say. And, our company in Ontario, we use the same provider, but in a different environment, in a different database, and with a different software release or version. So they're working siloed with 2 different versions of the CRM. And what happens when you have this type of situations? You ended up paying for one contract here in Quebec and one contract there in Ontario. And you are not using the fact that you have one company to negotiate that and get to a better deal with that provider. So one thing to be done is to take inventory of everything you have in place, everything you have in place. So second, right after that, is to assess users counts, to assess modules you are paying for. I'm not saying you are utilizing, I'm saying paying for. Assess the areas within the company utilizing this, or even like in this case, I just gave you this example of my neighbor. What are the different entities of your company that are utilizing the same system, and why are they utilizing this? And take a look at what's being used. So sometimes I would keep with the CRM example, okay? Sometimes people want to have a CRM because they heard that CRM is interesting to them. And then a VP of sales, they come into the IT department, they say, hey, listen, we need a CRM. I had this in the previous company and it's great and we need to utilize it. And by the way, you have an ERP already with a sales module that covers for sales, but the sales VP, he is asking you to buy a CRM. But CRM is quite heavy in terms of the complexity of the concept of having a 360 view of your clients, and in every and each point of entry of this client, when they enter contact to you, you will have that vision of everything they're talking to you independently, if it's sales or if it's in support or if it's in maintenance. The concept of CRM is quite bigger and goes further than sales, okay? So just for the sake of this example, I'm saying sometimes your end users are requesting something that you have already what they need, so you need to assess the usage of that solution. If you bought a CRM, an expensive CRM, one of those tier 1 CRMs, it will be costly to you. And if they're underusing it just for sales, just to keep contact with people and registering, their contacts with them, you could have used your sales module of the ERP to do that. Most of the ERP vendors, they have a very good sales module that can cope with that. So if you're not going, beyond this scope, you don't need that. But I don't want to go too deep into the discussion of CRM and sales module, this versus that. The idea here, it's just to give you a gist of what you should do to assess the usage of each system that you have in place. Find overlapping systems. Like in this example, you could have used the sales module. You don't need to use the CRM for simple things. And so that's a cost you don't need to have, with a tier 1 CRM system. After doing that, I want you to have it all in a spreadsheet. So the system you have, the version, who's utilizing, where, which areas, how much you pay, and what is the purpose of that system to your company. And then I want you to take a look at every and each line of every and each system you have and see if there are overlapping systems in place. Then in sequence, you will gather all the contracts you have with those vendors. And by doing that, you will look to terms. You will search for terms. You will search for renewal dates. You will search for rates. So every time a contract is in its anniversary, let's say it's every year or every 2 years or every 3 years, there is a rate that corrects the contract and you will be paying more at that date. I want you to have that date noted as well in this spreadsheet. And any surcharges, let's say you are using more data than usual. There are ERPs that will charge you for data, for quantity of lines in the bill of materials, So you need to take a look at the surcharges as well and take a look at the invoices they are sending you and see if they are matching this and if they are compliant with the contract terms, okay? Assess the needs, see if your end users are actually utilizing the system as well, because if they're not utilizing, go see the logs, see if they're logging in, see if they're using all the modules that are there. I want you to figure that out, okay? And you got to do a major reorganization internally. That's the first step after you have assessed the situation and you have inventory of everything, okay? Before going out and bugging the vendors, assess the situation and organize it internally. So talk to your users and say, hey, by the way, you don't need a CRM. Let me show you what we have in our ERP systems as for sales module, and this will help you a lot. You know, we need to save some money, so we can put this into marketing, or we can use this for an event, or you can, save the money for a more profitable quarter. I don't know the reasons behind why you want to cut costs, but it is important to show these users what you have and what they can use, and then organize the things properly. Let's say if you are this neighbor that I have, that he has 2 different versions of the same CRM, and he is paying with 2 different contracts to the same provider, okay? This is a cause for talking to your representative at that company, at the CRM provider, and say, hey, listen, we have 2 contracts. We should merge those 2 contracts, and we should have one single instance. It makes no sense to have people siloed. And I want to see what I can do in terms of synergy to lower my costs in terms of user counts or in terms of what I'm paying for hosting these systems into different databases. So you got to organize things internally, and you can do it. So finally, when you have it all figured out, all this lists figured out, you can then negotiate with the vendors. So you have enough information to provide to these vendors. Why are you doing this? And so the idea is not to just negotiate because you need to negotiate it because you want to save money. No, you have reason. You can show these vendors that you're not utilizing this system. You're just paying for something that's not being utilized. They will have a better client, a happier client if they unload you with the cost of something that you're not utilizing. So it is important to show your reasons to the vendor that you did your internal assessment and you organized your IT inventory. And lastly, listen, I do evaluation and selection, as a way of life. And I'm not here to try to sell you my services, but the very last thing that you should do to cut costs with your software providers is to replace one of them. I would say before you get there, you try to negotiate first. You show them your interest in getting costs down and the reasons why. But if the vendor is holding grounds and saying, no, I will not negotiate. I will not give you a better terms in the contract. I will not lower my fees. I will not lower my surcharges. Then you have grounds to say, listen, so this is not working for me. I will reassess my processes. I will reassess my requirements, and I will go through a evaluation and selection process. And if you don't know how to do this, you can hire consultants like me that will do this for you. We can invite even this vendor, your incumbent vendor, to participate in the process. And I have a very interesting story to share with you in this case as well. I did this project back in my home country, Brazil, where the client had a local vendor, very local vendor from his own state, and they were paying dearly for that system. And the system was not actually good and wasn't a system for a services company. It was a system that came from discrete manufacturing and was just like trying to, grind and make it work. And the client tried to lower its costs with this vendor, and they were, just not interested in it. Then we did the evaluation and selection process, and during that process, we figured out, based on the requirements, that the vendor that they had in place was not the best fitment for their needs. And we found a tier 1 solution for them that had a better fitment. And the client was quite expecting a high cost for a tier 1 solution. But when it came to the negotiation with the vendor that won that business, we were able to lower the recurring cost for that client in 50%. So the client left behind an old system and a system that wasn't a good fit for him to now have a better fitment system. And this system was half of the price of the previous one. So that was a magical negotiation and an excellent replacement for that system that that client had. So I'm saying this is the ultimate goal, because when you change a system, when you replace a system, you will go through the change management. You have all these pains and all these difficulties to go through this process. I'm not saying this is the ideal scenario. I'm saying if you need to do so, use the proper requirements, use the proper process and the due process to get to a better solution for you. And usually when you are doing this type of inventory and reassessment of the solutions that you have in place, you can negotiate with your vendors. Let's say all the solutions, they are needed and you really need to keep all of them. So you can get down at least 10 to 15% in your recurring costs with the current incumbent vendors. And if you figure out that you don't need certain modules, you don't need certain features, and you can prove that to the vendor and you can take that out from your contract, you can get to better savings. You can get to bigger savings. I would say the range of 25 to 50%. That could be done as well. Of course, you won't have anymore some features and functionalities, but it doesn't matter. You don't need that. It wasn't being used before. And lastly, if you need to go through the evaluation and selection, you do it and you try to find a system of that has a better fitment for you and also that has a better cost. So I hope that you enjoyed this video, that can be helpful to you, can be helpful to your company, and you can use this technique and this assessment to lower your costs. And this channel is very interested. I am very interested in getting to know your opinion about this video, your ideas as well, your tips on how to negotiate, better terms for your contracts. So feel free to leave a comment below as well. I would like to say that it's your comments and it's your like that propelled me to put more contents like this out there. So please leave a comment and leave your like as well for this video and subscribe. And Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.